to now coming to Accenture, which is about IT solutions and services. So our journey about SRII, what digital innovation for major part of the economy and around the world, is much more relevant to Prith and Accenture. So with that, Prith, thank you so much for being here, and I'll look forward to getting your vision perspectives.
Thank you. So as Chris said, I lead our global technology R&D at Accenture. As part of my responsibility, I run our Accenture Technology Labs, which is 5 lab locations around the world. We're in Silicon Valley, Washington, D.C., Beijing, Bangalore, and Sophia Antipolis in France. I also run our open innovation program with startups. And finally, we do this Accenture Technology Vision, which is every year we publish our technology vision trends, sort of similar to what Chris showed with the Gartner trends. And these are sort of, every year we do this, and this is about, we have been doing this for about 9 years now. And each year we also have a theme that kind of ties all these trends together. And last year our theme was every business is a digital business, essentially saying that using digital technologies, how companies like GE and Procter & Gamble and other large companies are using sort of digital technologies, IoT, et cetera, to move to become digital businesses themselves. So this year, our trend is essentially using that we are already in the digital business and how using digital technologies, you can stretch your boundaries and grow and form partnerships with sort of vendors, suppliers, customers, end users, and how these digital technologies are essentially stretching your boundaries where industry boundaries are being reconfigured, repositioned. But before I do that, I thought I would kind of share with you some mega trends that are in the IT industry. Again, being in an IT conference, I'm sure you all are aware of these things, but the 3 big trends that are facing our IT industry are, first, the trend around the connected world, which is the world that we see around us. Everything is getting connected with sort of connected devices, IoT, smart sort of engines, smart sensors, smart sort of dryers, washers, refrigerators, Fitbits, and so on. And the next is, with all the connected world, you're seeing a lot of data that is being generated, being collected, so the need to store tremendous amounts of data. And the third thing is, when you have a lot of data, you have to analyze this data in a very intelligent manner. So the 3 mega trends that we are seeing is connected world around IoT, big data, and intelligence everywhere. Now, to kind of share some more sort of details around this, the connected world, as we know it, right? In the past, it used to be sort of the smartphones, the tablets, PCs, and so on. And the new world of connected world is the smart washers, dryers, phones, smart bikes, smart cars, and so on. So the connected world is moving in a completely different direction, right? As was mentioned by a very famous paper by GE. We have a representative from GE here, Joe Salvo, who I work with in this area of industrial internet. So this is the connected world that is a tremendous opportunity, and it's one of the tenets of our tech vision. Now, in this connected world, if you see some of the numbers, again, the numbers are quite big, right? People are talking about 50 billion connected devices by the year 2020. The number of apps that will be sort of will run on your iPhones, iOS, Android devices will be sort of 5 billion apps. The amount of data that will be generated by these devices and the people, sort of 16 exabytes of data every month. So it's just tremendous amount of data that is being generated and consumed and used by these IoT devices. So this brings me to my the point of the data. And if you look at a Ford Energy hybrid car, just one car generates 250 gigabytes of data in 1 hour, right? You multiply that by the 100 million sort of cars in the world and the number of hours in a day. Now you're talking of not just gigabytes, petabytes, exabytes, zettabytes, 44 zettabytes of data. That's a tremendous amount of data they are going to generate, right? GE's gas turbine, one data center, right? One gas turbine generates the data of an entire data center. So tremendous amount of data is being generated by sort of these IoT devices. The third part is about intelligence everywhere. What sort of the devices that we see are, each of these devices will be smarter, like the thermostat, the Nest thermostat is becoming a smart thermostat, the car, the smart washer, the smart dryer, the smart car, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the trends, the mega trends that we are all seeing today. Again, that's all known to you. But so that forms the background of our Tech Vision this year. And another very interesting statistic that we shared in our Tech Vision this year is that if you look at from 2000 to 2015, in the last 15 years, 52% of the global sort of Fortune 500 companies are gone. They have been sort of, they went out of business, they acquired whatever, they're gone because of the digital disruptions that you see today, right? The technology that I talked about around connected world, big data, intelligence, et cetera, right? These are the digital technologies that are, if large companies don't embrace these technologies, essentially they will be part of this statistic, right? So essentially that's kind of the point that is made in our Tech Vision. So that's the context. So each year we publish our Tech Vision. As I said, we have been doing this for about 9 years now. And this particular year, we involved sort of interviews, surveys from 2,000 of our top clients. So there's a lot of survey data that went into this. We had an external advisory board consisting of about 30 top business leaders in Silicon Valley, some professors from academia, from Stanford, Berkeley. They came together and helped us guide our vision. The vision was published in February this year. So the vision is online. You can read it, but I'm going to walk you very quickly through the 5 trends in our Tech Vision. And the key point in this, the 5 trends is sort of stretching your boundaries, what we call succeeding in the we economy. What do we mean by that? So when you think about running a large company today, a company like, say, Kaiser Permanente in the healthcare area, or GE, or say, United Airlines, right? These companies typically focus on running their own company in the most efficient manner, right? And you try to run it like so that you can sell a lot of your products, and do it in a very cost-effective manner. What we are saying today is in the digital business, using digital technologies, you can form partnerships with vendors, suppliers, customers, end users, and in a way, increase the total pie, right? So essentially so that you can all succeed in not your own economy, but in that we economy. That's essentially the key theme behind our Tech Vision. So within that, we have 5 trends that we have talked about, and I'm going to walk you through these 5 trends around the Internet of Me, the outcome economy, platforms, intelligent enterprise, and workforce reimagining. So let me kind of walk you through each of these trends, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of the trends. So the first one is Internet of Me. What this is saying is that in the past, the world was mass sort of communication, right? When I read the New York Times, the printed version of the New York Times, all 10 million copies of New York Times were identical. And when I read the New York Times, right, I am of Indian origin, I want to learn about cricket, New York Times printed edition did not print the news about cricket, the World Cup cricket that happened a month ago. A personalized version of New York Times, the digital version, would know that Prith is of Indian origin, he wants to know about cricket, so instead of showing news about baseball and football, would show the news about cricket. That is the personalized world, the world of Flipboard that we are all used to today, right? The personalized services. So when we interviewed our 2,000 clients, we asked them about their top 3 priorities in their businesses. They mentioned developing mass personalized services. And how do you get personalized services? Through the different channels of interaction you have with your customers, right? In the past, you went to a store, to a brick and mortar store, and you bought a pair of jeans from Gap. That was the only way of interacting to that sales clerk. Today, you can go to gap.com and look for jeans on your PC, or you could look at it on your smartphone, or you can look at it from your tablet. You have these multiple channels of interaction, right? Your PC, your phone, your tablet. Oh, and by the way, your Nest thermostat at home is also kind of finding out what you're doing at home. Oh, by the way, your car that you're driving has a connected device, so it gets to know your sort of the way you're driving, the way you live, and so on. So all these different, the hyper channels that we have to connection, that is built, and all the things that you say on Facebook, the tweets, the LinkedIn updates, and so on, you can essentially create a very unique customer profile in some technologies that we are working on in our labs called a customer genome, and that allows you to create a very, very personalized view of your customer, and that's the world that large enterprises are going towards. So for example, Mercedes, when you drive a Mercedes car today, right, it learns how you drive. It gets to know how you drive, whether you want to drive on highways or on roads, which radio stations you want to listen to. Do you like jazz music or classical music? So it gets to know you, and the more you drive, the more it knows you, and it provides a much better driving experience. Now, by the way, through an API, Mercedes can connect up to the Nest thermostat at home so that it knows that Prith will reach home in 22 minutes, and it will set the home temperature at the precise 72 degrees Fahrenheit that Prith likes with the right humidity and so on. This is the world of mass personalized services that we are moving towards. Those are just a couple of examples. Next trend is around outcome economy. Again, this is being enabled by this Internet of Things. But when people talk about IoT, people immediately talk about that hardware product. Fitbit that I wear. But it's not about that product. It's not about that hardware device, the Fitbit. It's about the outcome, services to end outcomes, which is the most important thing. People sometimes forget that. So some large companies, enterprise companies like Monsanto, they sell seeds and fertilizers. What Monsanto did is they acquired a company called Climate Corporation that makes farm intelligence sensors. So they put these sensors in the ground, and they measure the soil temperature, humidity, how much water it has, et cetera, and connects it to weather reports, weather forecasts, and thereby integrating those two and advising the farmers about what crop to plant, when to plant them, what fertilizers to acquire, when to use the fertilizers, and a complete package so that they form a partnership with the farmer about farming as a service, driving that farming outcome, not selling seeds and fertilizers. That's what this particular trend is all about. So there's another company that we talk about in our vision called Proteus. In the healthcare space, they make a tiny microchip that goes inside a tablet, and once you consume that tablet, it dissolves, and it communicates through a Bluetooth, and it lets your doctor and nurse know, yes, Prith has consumed that tablet. Why is this useful? Well, it turns out that very old people who have Alzheimer's and so on oftentimes forget when they take medication. They are supposed to take blood pressure medication or a heart attack medication, and oftentimes they forget, did I take it or not, right? So through this microchip, Proteus is forming partnership with doctors and nurses to drive the end patient outcome about whether the patient is adhering to the medication that they're being prescribed. So this is the new world of outcome economy that I want to kind of share with you. The third trend in our vision is actually the most important trend, and I think this is something that Krish also talked about when he showed some of the digital platforms work. What the platform is doing is essentially, we all know about platforms in the smartphone world that we use, right? We use our iOS, the smartphone from Apple, this iOS platform. Oh, that's a fantastic thing, right? You can upload all kinds of apps on that iOS platform. So people, as soon as they think about platforms, they think about, oh, it's a technology. A platform is three things. It's a technology, it's a governance model, and there is a business model. So true, you can upload apps on an iOS platform, but the governance model is that you cannot just upload any app on an iOS. It has to have the right security privileges, the right privacy settings, and so on and so forth. Then only will Apple allow you to upload that app on an iOS platform. And the third thing is the business model, right? That 30% of all the revenue goes to Apple. Now, why does an app developer give up 30% of the revenue to Apple? Because scale at which once you create an app, you upload that app to iOS, you can immediately reach out to 1 billion users, right? So the platform, the advantage of the platform is speed and scale at which you can take application and sort of scale it to lots and lots of customers. So what has happened is, in the past, platforms were used in the consumer world like iOS and Android. Now what is happening is there is a lot of platforms being developed in the enterprise world around Amazon Web Services, Google, and so on and so forth. Now the trend that is happening is there are industry-specific platforms. GE has just announced a platform called Prith, which is in the industrial equipment space, right? They are partnering with other app developers to develop apps on their GE Prith platform. Philips has created a Philips healthcare platform for developers to create apps for nurses, doctors, and others to kind of talk to each other and improve healthcare outcomes. Ford has created a connected car platform. GM has created a connected car platform. So as it turns out, many of these industrial companies are saying, hey, let's try to recreate what Apple has done in the iOS world. We will do it in our specific industry. So in the automotive industry, there are like 5 or 6 connected car platforms. So everybody wants to create a car platform. The trouble is, who is going to win? So in our Tech Vision, we talk about the journey about creating a platform. The key technology is the use of APIs, application programming interfaces. And many companies make the mistake that they just open up that API to the public world and hope that other developers will start creating apps on that platform. What we say is, it is about a journey. Suppose you're a large company like General Motors, you need to open up your automotive connected car API to people within GM first through a private API and create the first 200 apps within GM, then go out and open up your APIs to your partners, and then have those partners create the next 1,000 apps. By the time you have now got 200 from within, 1,000 from your partners, by the time you go to your public APIs, you have 1,200 apps already in your ecosystem, and then it will be much easier for GM to compete with the Ford and the Chryslers and the BMW. So that's kind of the key point in our platform revolution, the move towards large companies creating industry-specific platforms so that you can leverage the ecosystem so that they can create more value and more value-added services on top of. The fourth trend is around the intelligent enterprise, with this sort of tremendous amount of data that is being generated today, right? Humans are literally dying in that amount of information. Analyze that data quickly enough. So what we talk about in this particular thing is how the world is moving towards more intelligent computing, right? Sort of the world of AI as we know it. So, however, in that world also, there's sort of a 3-step journey that we are seeing. The first step is what is called rule-based automation, right? So in the earlier worlds of AI, people used to have expert systems where you typed up various rules, and if this happened, then do this. If this other thing happened, do this other thing. So applying example of rule-based automation for say a thermostat, right? You can type in a rule that if the temperature of the room becomes less than 60 degrees, then turn on the heating, right? Because you will feel cold. So if the temperature is below 60 degrees, turn on the heating. That is a rule for the Nest thermostat. The trouble is, next time you have, like Prith gets on a treadmill at home, the temperature is below 60 degrees, but still after 20 minutes on the treadmill, Prith feels hot and he wants to turn on the temperature, right? That's another rule, right? So the first rule will be, if temperature below 60 degrees, turn on the heating. The second rule is if Prith gets on a treadmill, after 20 minutes, turn down the heating. So there's all these rules that you can program. Of course, you can have programmers to program those rules, but it becomes very, very hard to maintain these large set of rules in a rule-based automation. That's where machine learning comes in, and essentially you observe all these different things that are going around in your home, and you automatically, the machine learns these rules and it programs itself. And the third step in the journey is what is called cognitive computing, and many of you are aware of what's happening with IBM and their Watson system, Jeopardy. There is IPsoft from Amelia. We are working with some startup companies called ISD and Expert Systems and Saffron Technologies. All of those are using the concept of deep learning, cognitive computing, and how these things are essentially going to assist the humans in that automated parts of work. So, for example, Amelia, what it does is it's a virtual agent that sits in sort of to assist a call center agent. When you buy a printer cartridge from HP and that thing fails, that cartridge fails, you become angry, you call up the HP's call center. A human operator would say, oh, sorry, Mr. Prith, for your printer cartridge is not working. Let me send you a replacement cartridge. That's what the human operator does. Well, Amelia from IPsoft sits next to the human operator, listens to that phone conversation. Next time angry Chris calls up HP, instead of a human operator, Amelia will pick up the thing and say, Chris, sorry, Mr. Chris, for that cartridge. Let me send you a replacement cartridge. So those boring, repetitive things that were done by humans are increasingly going to be done by automated machines, the cognitive computing machines, right? That's kind of what is part of this trend. Which brings us to the last trend in our tech vision around the workforce reimagined. So with all this automation, people are saying, hey, are jobs going to go away? Is every job in the world going to go away? That's not the case. What we are saying is that the boring, repetitive jobs taken over increasingly by these robots and AIs and cognitive computing machines, but the humans will do the higher-end jobs, right? So we just did some work with the World Economic Forum this year, where we actually worked with the World Economic Forum on the social, economic impact of the industrial Internet of Things. And there, in that report, we talked about the same particular trend around how the workforces in the future will be transformed. So we give an example of, for example, the plumber. The plumber comes to your home and fixes a leak in your pipes, right? But in the future, that same plumber will be augmented with digital technologies like Google Glass, will point this phone at that wall, and it will automatically see all the blueprints of the pipes and so on that was behind the thing. So essentially using digital technologies, the plumber becomes a digital plumber. He gets enabled to do a lot more things. It's about increasing productivity of the blue-collar workers. The gap between blue-collar and white-collar workers will go away. It will become the gray-collar workers in the future. So again, we can talk about a lot more things. I mentioned that as part of this, we did a study of 2,000 of our top clients. 78% of our clients said that within 3 years, they are going to have training programs in their companies. Today, in large companies like IBM, Accenture, HP, GE, etc., we have training programs for employees. Within 3 years, 78% of our companies said they will have training programs for robots and for humans to work together. This is the world we are moving towards. So thank you very much for your attention. We just covered, as I said, our 5 trends in our technology vision. The trends around Internet of Me, outcome economy, platform revolution, intelligent enterprise, and workforce reimagined. I invite you to download the full report from accenture.com/Accenture Tech Vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. So we will take Prith's sort of quick Q&A in the coffee break, and Prith is coming back this afternoon again for the panel discussion because we have some time constraint for our next speaker. So we're going to skip the Q&A at this time. We'll resume it in the afternoon. Thank you, Prith.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is another industry SAP when we started SRII. And he was one of our, very first SRII Global Conference, one of our keynote speaker at that time. And now Sanjay has moved on to a new role at VMware, and he is going to talk about the new initiative and innovation from the VMware perspective, which is all about virtualized computing, virtualized information, virtualized workforce, workload. So with that, let me introduce our next keynote speaker, Sanjay Punen from VMware. Sanjay, come this way. Let me change the stickers. Actually, I don't need slides. He was supposed to speak half an hour early, but because of our kind of delay. So
Chris,
thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Sanjay, I'm going to speak without slides even better. So
I'm going to skip the slides because I think you guys have seen lots of PowerPoint and just speak a little bit from the heart. I appreciate being here. Hey, I see Yusuf. I'd like to see if I see some familiar faces. This guy used to work with me at SAP. So, are you speaking here? Oh, good. I was going to see some. How many of you are in academia? In sort of corporate world, meaning not finance, not venture capital. Okay. How many of you in venture have investing roles? Okay, good. Did I leave out education? I covered that. That's sort of good. Anything other nonprofits? Okay, good. It just gives me a survey of what it is. I just want to speak just about 15, 20 minutes about some of the key things that are going on. I've been a big fan of Chris's. I'm also a fan of his son. He's got a really smart family, and I think they're all competing for him for his IQ. But nonetheless, I'm appreciative of the fact that when you think about research and technology, what this world needs is a sustained investment in STEM. I'm a big believer in science, technology, engineering, math. I'm a first-generation immigrant that's very fortunate to be here because most immigrants, as you know, how many of you are immigrants, first-generation immigrants, meaning you came here, so that's like 50% of the room. Most Indians come here after their undergrad, and I was very fortunate in 1987. There were a few universities that were offering a scholarship. I mean, I grew up in a middle-class home in India, which is by all intents and purposes poor. Do you need a microphone? All right, okay. I guess this will be easier. My voice is usually pretty loud, but if you can't hear me now. And so I was just saying I grew up in a family in India, which is by all intents and purposes in the U.S. poor, and was very fortunate as 18 to get a scholarship to come to this university that I had no idea. It was in the middle of a town I'd never heard of called Hanover, New Hampshire, Dartmouth College, and the only thing I knew about them was they had a fantastic computer science program. And I assure you, it is much colder in Hanover, New Hampshire than Bangalore, India, as many of you who probably been to both places know. I froze my buns off, but I found very quickly, even after the first year of homesickness as an 18-year-old, that if you work hard, obviously, all of us are given gifts and many of you are smart, but if you can work hard and you're smart, anything is possible. Now, what I found since then is that there's a third element that hopefully all of you develop, which I think is very rare. You find a lot of people who are smart. You find a lot of people who are hardworking. You find very few people who are smart, hardworking, and humble. Okay? And I'm a big fan of servant leadership. Typically, you'll find people with two of the three qualities. They're hardworking, they're smart. Sometimes they are hardworking and humble. Rarely you find them smart and humble, but you put those three together. So I hope all of us, as we progress in our life, can find that balance of being smart, hardworking, and humble. Let me talk a little bit about what we see going on in our industry. We're at the cusp, for those of you who have been veterans in the industry for several decades, you've seen the mainframe era move to client-server. And we think the next big shift is everything from client-server to mobile cloud. And VMware has been one of the few companies, just for very kind of quick advertorial about us, we are the fifth largest software company today in the world. The biggest is Microsoft, the second is Oracle, the third is SAP, the fourth is Symantec, and the fifth is VMware. This year, with the split of Symantec that's happening, you know, Symantec splits into 2 companies. We will go ahead of them as the 4th largest software company in the world. We have been the fastest software company in growth. So we're about a $6.5 billion company in about 15 or 16 years. Just to give you a context, it took Microsoft 19 years to get to that same size. It took SAP 27 years to get to the same size. So we continue in our growth. We'll hopefully be one day as big as them at a faster clip. The 2 companies that are the fastest growing software companies today are VMware and Salesforce. So one's doing some innovative things in the cloud, in applications. One's doing some innovative things in terms of the way in which data centers evolve. Now, if you think about what we invented, for all of you who are scientists, and it came out of research that Diane Green and Mendel did at Stanford around virtualization. Virtualization, explained very simply, is, you know, you got all of these, if you have glasses of water here, rather than maintain, you know, separate bottles of water, if you pour water out of a central jug into glasses of water and use it sparingly, you save water. And that's in essence what virtualization does for the server vendors. As we began to progress in that speed, anybody know who were the biggest competitors of ours in the early years of that growth? It was the hardware vendors, because they felt that this was taking money out of the pocket of the hardware vendors. In course of time, the hardware vendors began to embrace this, and virtualization now became the de facto way in which everybody thinks about building the data centers. So what we call today compute virtualization is something that we pioneered. We today have about a 70% market share in that area, and we've begun to also expand that into the 3 typical pillars of a data center: compute, storage, and networking. So the science of virtualization, which is really, you know, pooling, automation, management, being able to do that at a higher level, we've now applied from both sort of compute workloads to storage and network. And the whole goal now is to be able to take that incredible way in which software defines the way in which you run a data center. We call it the software-defined data center, right? I have tremendous respect for the hardware industry. But, you know, I joke often, software is like the wine and hardware is like the bottle, right? It's not like you don't need bottles, but the wine's more precious than the bottle. So the genius of what you can do in computer science and in software allows you to then drive things in a much more commodity fashion for hardware. And our goal is to ensure that hardware continues to innovate. We heard a good set of comments from the folks at Intel around the things like Moore's Law. But software is what ultimately creates an enormous amount of sustained value. It creates timeless value, where things could change in the hardware layer, but your software layer, and that's really what we're, a software company. Everything we try to do is at that software layer. So as we think about automating and managing the data centers, the natural place in which a data center is heading is to the cloud. And our perspective there was that if we didn't have a way by which customers could very seamlessly move workloads between what's on-premise and into the cloud, long-term VMware, we're one of the most innovative companies, would be extinct. And you would move all of your workloads to an Amazon or to an Azure or something else. So we began over the course of the last 2 years to invest in cloud infrastructure as a service, with the goal being that if you are running in an on-premise world today, which is 500,000 customers of ours, if you want to then move those exact same workloads, let's say you're running SAP, or you're running Oracle, the custom application you built on their databases, or you're running Exchange, and you want to move those workloads into a cloud, you don't need to redo them in a foreign cloud like an Amazon. You can actually move them. So think of it like a mobile home, where the foundation, you just move from one place to another. The entire superstructure, which is your apps, stays the same. And that cloud infrastructure as a service for us is what we called vCloud Air. And the intent is to allow customers to move seamlessly between on-premise. Just as a data point, because I have tremendous respect for Amazon. They've done an incredible job over the last 10 years in cloud computing. But if I asked you a question, right, just to give you a sense of it, today we have 500,000 customers and about 50 million workloads that run on-premise, primarily on-premise. So 500,000 customers and 50 million compute workloads, okay? Amazon has 1 million customers, okay? 1 million customers, so twice our customer count. Anybody have a guess as to how many workloads they run in that cloud infrastructure? So 500,000 customers on-premise, 50 million workloads. Million customers, Yusuf will probably knows this answer. Just a uninformed or informed guess. Usually people say 10 or 15 million. The answer is 5 million workloads, okay? So 500,000 customers, 50 million workloads, 50 million CPU virtualization. Million customers and only 5 million. And the reason is the bulk of the customers running in Amazon are websites and lots of sort of people who aren't doing mission-critical applications. Very important, lots of developers, you know, lots of sites like Netflix and so on and so forth. But the mission-critical workloads still sit on-premise. People running SAP, running Oracle databases, running stuff. And our goal is as those 50 million workloads move, the question is, will they move like a flock of birds that fly, right? You've seen these birds that fly to the South Pole or the North Pole or the equator. Will they flee us and our workloads at VMware and move to an Amazon or Azure, or will they move to our cloud infrastructure? Which is why when we talk about disruptive innovation, the key first message I want to leave with you is we've been a disruptive innovator all of our 15 years of existence. We have to ask ourselves fundamentally what will disrupt us and then build the infrastructure and the technology to, in essence, disrupt ourselves. And if you don't do that, there is some company that's looking to take you out. That's the law of IT that's happened over and over and over again. So why it was very important for us to get into what we called hybrid cloud computing, which in essence says whether you're running this on-premise or a private or a public cloud, all of that stack that you've built with us over the years, over 15 years, that's known as VMware, can now run, and you don't need to worry about a data center at all. It runs in an infrastructure as a service. So the last year and a half, we began investing very heavily in infrastructure as a service. We're like, you could argue we're 10 years late to the game, okay? We probably should have started this 10 years ago when AWS started, but it's never too late. When I gave you those numbers of 50 million and 5, we still think the enterprise workloads are well, and for the first time in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, we were rated as one of the most visionary. I think the cloud computing game will come down to 3 or 4 vendors, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and us. And we have to be among those 3 or 4 that the enterprise. So the key thing that I wanted to leave with you is if you are an innovator, ask yourself not just what can you do today, ask yourself who is an existential threat that's going to take you out. And then build to ensure that you are actually there ahead of them. And it's usually a large vendor with enormous amount of scale or an incredibly innovative startup that's got a technology that's going to take you out. So as we think about other threats to our business, as we've looked at OpenStack and how we embrace that, or the container cloud-native applications, whether it's Docker or CoreOS or others, we've built a strategy that hopefully allows VMware to go from a $6 billion company to a $10 billion company to a 20, and so on and so forth. And that's the goal that we have to obsess about in the core part of our business, which is the data centers and infrastructure. Now, over the course of the last few years, we've now gotten to a new part of the business, which is all about these devices. Because if you think about what we do well as a company, again, you can only do certain things as a company based on the DNA of the people inside that. I spent 7 years of my life at SAP where I was president in charge of several of the key businesses like analytics and mobile and big data and so on. And the DNA of SAP is an applications company, business process. I ran the industry solutions group there, and I was amazed at how deep the knowledge of the SAP DNA was around industry solutions, and tremendous amount of both my own learning to be challenged. VMware is a very different company. We're an infrastructure company. We will never be an applications company. We're much more comfortable with the technology that supports applications, right? So you can take that same DNA of infrastructure and apply that not just in the DNA of a data center, but also into the DNA of the device and desktop world. And that's the business I run. We call that end-user computing. And in essence is to say all of your workplace technologies, desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, in the future world, Teslas, anything from a desktop to a Tesla, you can apply the same principles of management and virtualization and security and provide what we think of as a single pane of glass. Okay? So if you think about your experience today, many of you came to this meeting. I noticed you've got laptops. A few of you have got Macs. Most of you have Windows laptops as I look. Several of you didn't even come to this meeting with a laptop. You've got your phone or you've got your tablet. in terms of the way in which you're interacting in the world. When was the first SRII meeting that you did, Chris?
In fact, we started 2009 at
Okay, 1 or 2 years after the iPhone first came out, 2007. I bet if we did the same meeting in 2009, everybody here would have had a laptop, okay? Everybody. Now the world's changing. Your children, for those of you who have children who are approaching into college or in the high school, probably shun a laptop. I have twin boys who are 5 years old. I have a girl who's 8. When my boys who were, within 12, 18 months, they picked up my iPad. They began to play with it, and it didn't take them any training to get the swipe motion. They figured out the pinch and zoom motion instantly. And I thought to myself, these kids are going to be, at some point in time, they're going to pick up this foreign object called a laptop, okay? And they're going to go to this foreign object and expect it to swipe. They're going to expect it to zoom and pinch. That's the world they lived in. They're going to pick up a magazine in the future, a paper magazine, and expect it to zoom and pinch. Like, what do you mean? You didn't create a paper magazine to be digital? That's the world they live in, okay? So we have to be comfortable that as this world moves, we are going to be quickly obsolete ourselves. If you are working on a laptop today, you're probably in that minority of people. Now, I understand you got to have a keyboard, but today, this device becomes your remote control to the enterprise, okay? You don't, in your consumer world, lug around 300 CDs in your back of your car. You've got your phone, or you have your iPod, you've got iTunes, you've got iCloud, and you've got, music that streams to you. Why can't your enterprise life be the same way? Instead, you've got to manage lots of usernames and passwords. You've got to have, two-factor authentication. You can't go into the terminal of a San Francisco airport and just say, on this terminal, I'm going to access my applications, the enterprise. Why is that not possible? Of course, you can access Google Mail. You can access all these cloud applications. You can't access your own personal, and that needs to change. That's fundamentally because enterprise has created complexity and cost into the way in which you access applications. We believe the future of this world is one where, whether it's a phone or a tablet, like I said, it acts like your remote control into the enterprise. And typically on this, there's more software here than the first modern spacecraft in the 1970s. It becomes a portal, obviously, for you to access the cloud, very clearly where all of your applications potentially sit, or your private cloud if it's your own data centers. It becomes a projection technology onto a solution. So we've got these arcane things called projectors, okay? These things are an artifact of the past. The future is going to be Corning glass that is projectable. And if you talk to all of the glass manufacturers, I've got my iPhone and my Samsung S6 Edge. I got to keep all the mobile vendors happy. But if you look at the nature of the S6 now and the curved glass and the way in which Samsung's making that possible, Apple's doing some incredible. The future of glass is every piece of glass will be potentially projectable. And if we do that, then you don't need this anymore. You go to a San Francisco airport, you connect, the glass is projectable. You can have a conference meeting in a nice room, and you didn't bring anything other than this, okay? And that means that you have to have a layer of management and security around all of your devices and infrastructure that makes that happen. That's us. That's VMware. So a year ago, we acquired a company that was the leader in management and security solutions around mobile, a company called AirWatch in Atlanta. And that business for us has been completely on fire. We are killing it in the mobile space. We're doing incredibly well because we've taken the same science of what VMware did in the data center and applying it to the way in which you organize your workplace. So whether it's desktops or tablets or phones or Teslas, okay, whatever your favorite car is, or an ATM machine, you need to have that be a single pane of glass. You shouldn't have to work between those environments. Now you ask yourself, and I'll end with one final comment before I take some comments. Why us? Why VMware? Why do you think you're going to do a better job at managing that end-user computing environment over a Microsoft or a Google or an Apple? They're big companies too. In fact, they're bigger than you, okay? And in fact, Microsoft is a company that has a similar focus on end-user computing. Here is the grand equalizer, which is why I love Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat. This is what gives us, for 15 years, Microsoft has tried to compete with us in the hypervisor. We've just built a better product. And the reality is, in the post-PC world, all of you today probably have a variety of devices. Okay? In the PC world, you probably, majority of you had a Windows-based machine, right? A few of you have Macs. But how many of you came to this room with a Windows phone? It's all right. I'm not going to pick on you. But it's a good phone. I like Windows phones too. But if I ask the same question, how many of you came with a Windows laptop? 90% of you raised your hand. Right? So in the post-PC world, the fact that you have a very strong Apple iOS and a Google Android is exactly the reason you need a Switzerland company like VMware that basically can manage the heterogeneity. So we work very strategically with Cupertino, Apple, with Mountain View, Google, and then also with Seattle, Microsoft, to make sure Windows 10 versus Android versus Apple iOS, you have a very seamless experience. They're all very important partners to us. But you're not going to get that from one of them because they are usually building a management solution for their platform. And there's lots of conflicts of interest. You won't get a Microsoft engineer able to have a strategic discussion with Android because Google and Microsoft compete with each other. So that gives an opportunity for all of us to be able to build a strategic platform that's long-term. So I'd encourage you, top 3 things. Number 1, ensure that you are building disruptive innovation that is always leapfrog, but asking yourself, who's going to disrupt you? Okay, that's always going to be the case. Secondly, you can take the same aspects of your innovation from one adjacency. We did that in the data center to where the world of mobile is going. And third, ask yourself consistently what makes you differentiated. Okay, because you've got bigger vendors who have deeper pockets, and those have been some of the lessons that we have learned along the way. Hopefully, I leave that with you as encouragement. If any of you want to know more about what we're doing in any of these areas, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever social media is your favorite choice, and I wish you a good rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
I think Sanjay has to leave for some other meeting, so we'll take a few questions. I think you covered a pretty important topic of this whole virtualized world and workload and computing, and that field is full of opportunities. And I think your participation, your feedback in how the workload is going to be addressed will help companies like VMware and others to build the right solutions. So,
free to take any of them. Yes, sir.
So what do you think about, you mentioned 2 kinds of disruption. One from other companies at scale, the other is from startups with disruptive technology. What is VMware thinking about containerization technologies from companies like Docker?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, same thing that people asked us 2 years ago about OpenStack. I'll answer both of those because it'll give you a sense of the way we're thinking about it. As people said, hey, open source is going to destroy everybody's model. Open source is going to be a way in which people build their data centers. We felt that that was true to a certain extent. We felt that many of the layers of a data center stack, except for the hypervisor for us is like the heart. You can't, outsource your heart and put a chimpanzee's heart inside your heart. I mean, you have a human heart for a reason. Even heart transplants have other human hearts that are transplanted into humans. So our view was that in the core aspect of OpenStack, we needed to embrace as many of the layers, but there was a reason why there was a tremendous amount of science and technology put into the hypervisor. So we created an OpenStack stack called VMware Integrated OpenStack that had all of the layers of the OpenStack embraced, except our hypervisor that was proprietary and for a reason. It was worlds way ahead of the open source hypervisors like KVM and so on. It's done very well. So that's the way in which we approach it, which is to say there will be aspects of open source, the same thing with the container. So we embraced in cloud native apps that we announced last year, not just Docker. Docker to us is more than the company, it's a movement. So we've embraced Docker, Core OS, Kubernetes, many of these, and you're going to see those technologies integrated into our stack, but we still believe there will be some proprietary components that have value. Now, people believe the entire aspect of what we've done can be done open source. We'll watch that. But today we think that there will be key aspects of that still need to be proprietary, and there will be many other layers that you can get the benefit. So we will contribute into much of what's going on in the open source movement. We will embrace many of the open source companies that are springing up, including Docker, with tremendous respect for them, but they're all trying to prove business models as to what's really going to be a way to make money. Some of those companies are making more money selling T-shirts than actually selling software. You can buy a T-shirt with this. So our goal is, as a company, we're not a charity organization. We have to make a profit. And the way in which we do that is to ensure that we embrace open source technologies in every place we can, while still understanding what aspect of it from our enterprise customers has value because it has a proprietary licensed technology that we can add. And as we do that, we'll keep getting feedback from customers. So we announced our first capabilities around the containerized technologies last year at VMworld. You'll see more. We did some this year earlier and then more coming out. And I suspect that over time, this will become something that's a very, very key part to our innovation too. Other questions? Okay, good. Listen, if you have a question, yes, sir. For the small and medium businesses? Yes, thank you. So we have about 500,000 customers, and if you know the laws of sort of the numbers, the bulk of the world is not big companies. The bulk of the world is actually small companies. So I'm going to guess, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess at least 480,000 of those 500,000 customers are SMBs. Okay? We have 99% of the global 2,000 companies. One of the advantages of VMware is when I was at SAP, you had the blue world, which was SAP, and the red world, which was Oracle. We run underneath blue and red. We have no differential. We have lots of great SAP customers. We have lots of great Oracle customers. But the biggest customers of ours are probably 10 or 20,000. And then the remainder of our, 480, 450,000 plus are all SMBs. And the way we are successful with them is in two fashions. One is we have a huge channel. We have about 75,000 channel partners who over 15 years of working with us, we take a preference of going through them. Okay, in essence, as often as possible, our VARs and our disties take our product and we compete with them, we actually sell through them. So especially outside this, the US certainly is very strong, but in EMEA and APJ, it's an entirely channel-driven business. So our channels are very, very strong. Many of these are either the hardware guys or their distributors, and they over years have built a very, very strong, loyal partners. Now the reason that channel is very strong, when it gets to this business, I'm able to get to the same channel partners and tell them, if you were very loyal with us over the last 15 years with our desktops and our servers, new product I'd like you to also push to your channel, the mobile management and security solutions, to those same partners or some subset of them. So that's one. We work very closely with the VARs and SIs. The second, we think that many of these these SMBs are going to be actually very favorable to a cloud solution first. In other words, they may not even want anything on premise. So part of what we do in driving a cloud service for desktops as a service, or part of the reason we acquired AirWatch, it was the only company that did everything cloud. It's a cloud-based mobile management and security solution. Everybody else was on premise. These guys are like Salesforce and most of the other technologies. So a good part of our 16,000, 17,000 customers of AirWatch are also SMBs. So you have to have a nuanced strategy. And I think you have to, in the SMB world, think frictionless, right? You can't be sending a very expensive sales rep to a small and medium customer because you're not going to make your money effectively being able to pay them and win a small deal, which is why we work through the channel. We work very closely with cloud-based solutions. In certain cases, we even have appliances, because that's the third way in which you can get into them without having to do a lot of services. If they're not happy with a cloud solution because of security, we'll appliance the whole solution into a stack that just has all of and in the data center world, there's an increasing trend for what's called converged infrastructure, where you put server, compute, and networking into a box, and you converge that with the hardware being white box technology too. And then when a customer says, well, I don't want to use cloud, I actually want to use a appliance-based solution, we have that ready to go. For the big companies, they may want to kind of piece that apart and have a lot more flexibility. But those are probably the three approaches. Number one, really get your channels, your VARs and SIs, lean towards the cloud if you can, and where a customer is allergic to the cloud, try to use an appliance. Okay? All right. Thank you very much, folks. Have a great conference. Thanks, Chris. All the best.
We'll take about 15 minutes, a quick coffee break, and after the coffee break, we have a very important panel session where we are inviting senior leaders from Asia, Europe, India, China, here on the table to talk about digital innovation in their part of the world. So what we have done this morning is you heard from 3 senior leaders in the Valley about how they look at digital innovation for economy from different perspectives. So this kind of puts a very good landscape of the bigger picture. Now let's come back after 15 minutes and talk to these people who are in different parts of the world, what digital innovation means to them. And then we will try to, again this afternoon, have a more thought leaders followed by panel sessions to develop something called call to action. What are the key action plans they will drive? So please come back in 15 minutes, and I'm going to invite our panelist speaker for the next panel to just come join us and get ready to. So hope you guys all have your coffee. All the panel speakers, can you please come within 5? If you have to take coffee, just take your coffee and come back in 5 minutes.